This is a call for vengeance. Welcome to today's show. I had mentioned before the Super Bowl that we were very due for a false flag event. Now, the Super Bowl had a ton of predictive programming in regards to an event happening at a championship game or a Super Bowl game, but I was off by a few days because what we ended up getting was a more convenient shooting at the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade. And of course, it checks all the boxes, the narratives that they want out there. Now, before I discuss some of it here on YouTube, I have to let you know that I have a 45-minute full episode podcast on this event linked below. I recommend you go to that video, go to those links and listen to that podcast for more detail on it. Because there's only so much you could say here on YouTube without getting caught by the algorithm and having them flag and remove your channel. They don't want you to know what a false flag operation is. They don't want you to know how these work, how they actually create false flags, because, again, the whole narrative now of false flag, people just think, they're like, they're saying that, the Democrats have sent people to do it because they want to frame conservatives. People don't realize that this is what the government agencies do, okay? And we can look at this event and immediately know it's a false flag. Now, it'll be certainly interesting to see what the motive is of the shooters. Now, were they San Francisco 49ers fans? Oh no, it looks like one of the shooters was actually wearing a Patrick Mahomes jersey. And isn't it interesting that all of the Freemasonic secret society member athletes, who a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are in there, they were all safe on the bus. So whatever these attackers decided, which multiple shooters, they decided that they wanted to prey on an innocent crowd of civilians, because of course that's a motive that makes no sense at all, right? I mean, the motive to kill, you would need a motive to go to jail for the rest of your life. You would really need a reason to do it. Kind of like what I just covered on the website with the mega church. The motive that this person had to bring their child to a church was that they wanted to free Palestine. Are you joking with me? And people actually believe that narrative? Well, of course they do, because they're in a psychosis. The same with this story. Whatever narrative is fed, they will believe. And the narrative will revolve around a quote-unquote conservative, a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist, a quote-unquote gun advocate, because they're trying to frame in people's minds what a terrorist is and what should be deemed on government red flag laws as mental health. Now, I go into deep detail about that over in the podcast. It's linked below. Make sure you subscribe now and create an account over on Podbean or Spotify so that you get notifications of my podcast. That is the future of this channel. That is where I'm going to eventually be, because at some point, they're going to make a digital ID mandatory to upload on here, and they might over there as well. But I am obviously struggling to keep content up over here, so do that now. Now, let's look at some of the narratives. The fact that we have multiple shooters is a big narrative. As we speak, the government is trying to put bills in order, bills out there. They're trying to pass bills, HR 6981 being one of them, that civilians are not allowed to carry and gather together. The bill 6981 is Preventing Private Paramilitary Activity Act of 2024. That's what it's called. Okay, in that it states that any group of 3 or more persons associating under a command structure for the purpose of functioning in public or training to function in public as a combat support, law enforcement, or security services unit. Now, they can word it however they want. They don't want people to be able to arm themselves in more. First of all, they don't want you to be armed, period. They don't want you to be armed multiple people, period. So the other themes that'll come out of this, in addition to that, right? Oh, it's getting dangerous. They'll name it militias, conspiracy militias, etc. This is all to frame people like us and to take our rights away. If you don't see where this is going, you either dump bleach in your eyes, you're wearing a blindfold, or you're just refusing to see it. This is where it's headed. So the other thing that we probably will hear out of this, again, is the weapon use. Of course, it'll be an assault rifle, because the government wants assault rifles. Why do they want assault rifles? Why are they saying, we just want those, we don't want to get your handguns, you don't need to protect your home with that? Because they're fearful of a civilian uprising. That's it, period. Okay, civilians in this country are seeing what the government's doing. They're seeing what's happened in other countries that are unarmed. They see Canada specifically and how insane Trudeau is, and how they keep taking, literally force the carbon tax. They've seen Australia. They've seen China, how they were letting people burn alive in their apartments where they were locked in over the outbreak and didn't even care to release the civilians. So civilians here see what's happening. The goal is to convince people to pass these mental health red flag laws, and they're doing both sides. Like I said earlier about the church, the mega church, they want to do both. So I'll go into more detail about that on the podcast, because what that means is that they start making these red flag laws about mental health, and they're really talking about people like me and you, not people who you would think actually should be committed. People who cut off their own ding dong. So here are a few of the stories, okay? Number one, this is the anniversary today. Believe it or not, because this is how Coinky Dinks work. This is the 6-year anniversary to the day of the Parkland shooting, right? I covered it. It was one of the clear events that they pre-planned in maybe the last 20 years, not named Hook at Sandy. So I covered that event. Obviously, that's all been removed. That's available on the website. But 6 years to the day, it's, very coincidental, right? And then, of course, you get all of these narratives that will be the same ones over and over again, right? Children are among the wounded in shooting following parade because they want you to start feeling emotions. They try to bring emotions out of you by involving children, because anybody with a soul obviously is hurt by hearing anything bad happening to kids, even though the people in power who are doing this don't have souls, and they actually do these things to kids without you realizing it, right? And then they pretend to be your president, your vice president, your heads of Amazon, etc. Okay? The other thing that comes out of it that we have to keep an eye on is location. Location is so crucial. Grocery stores, sporting events, parades, concerts, malls, churches, schools. Every one of those places I mentioned, a regular person likely goes to. Okay, unless you're a farmer and you don't go to the grocery, you go into the grocery too. Every one of those places you've been to, everybody can relate to going, and those are all places that you normally feel safe. That's why they're creating the events at those places. It's a psychological operation. It makes you feel unsafe going to the mall, makes you feel unsafe going to the movies, it makes you feel unsafe going to a concert. They're doing this by design so that you allow them to remove the rights of civilians to bear arms. And the only ones who will be allowed to will be them. They are so fearful of some type of a revolution, I should say, occurring that isn't a controlled revolution. In other words, a revolution that isn't Donald Trump led, which is part of their control system. They're trying to prevent civilians who are obviously paying attention to this rogue government. They're trying to prevent you from being able to do anything about it. They fear you. They fear truth, and they fear armed, awake civilians, because numbers is all that matters. They can have all the technology they want, and they do. They have a trained military, trained to go after civilians. They can have all this technology, even direct energy weapons, but at the end of the day, the numbers are what matter. It's old warfare, guerrilla warfare, and there's more of us than them. So as we continue, here's some of the other narratives, and I can't show you this stuff on the screen because of the algorithm, but I'm showing you pictures from the event. Kansas City mayor on the event that just happened. Okay, is quoted as saying, that's what happens with guns. Asked how a shooting could take place in an event with more than 800 law enforcement officers and tight security, Kansas City Mayor Quentin Lucas pointed to one main cause. He said, that's what happens with guns, end quote, at a news conference hours after the shooting. Oh, that's what happens with guns? So what happened to the 800 armed officers? What happened to the security checkpoints? Because usually you can't go into anywhere these days. And I know it's a parade to say it's on the streets, but it's pretty hard to be armed. But what about the law enforcement officers, right? Wow, they're trying to tell you that 800 law enforcement officers couldn't do anything about it. In fact, they're even telling us that the shooters were tackled. And this is one of those rare events that the shooters aren't named John Doe and pass away, that we actually might have shooters that survive the event. And then, of course, they'll give us a fictitious trial, and they'll send them off to wherever they're going to send them off, give them their cosmetic surgery so they can go live their lives out because they did what they were supposed to do, what their Masonic Brotherhood told them to do. They went and did it, and now they could live freely, never work again, and probably be paid with our tax money, because that's how these events actually work. So the mayor is already calling for gun control without even, that's another telltale sign of these false flags, right? They'll work you with the emotions. They'll say kids, they'll say innocent people. And again, doesn't mean that these things don't really occur, but you have to understand there's no motive of a civilian to ever do this to innocent people. If these civilians are going rogue, they'd be going after the government. They wouldn't be going after parades of innocent people in Chiefs gear. Unless they come out and tell us that the motive was that he was a big 49ers fan or he had money on the 49ers. But I wouldn't even be surprised if they came out and said the guy had money on the game and then conspiracy theorists told him that the game was rigged, so he went and did it, right? But here's the problem. Wouldn't he be mad at the players? Well, the players were conveniently on the bus when they decided to open fire. So the motive is lacking, because the motive is always lacking, right? The motive for Osteen's church is what? You just need to see Free Palestine written on the gun. That's all you need to see. Oh, okay. Yeah, free Palestine. That's enough of a motive for a woman a trans, of course, because that fits into it. A woman who identifies as both man and female, who has a 7-year-old, to go into a church armed with just civilians, very pro-Palestine, so taking it out on people who are going to church, willing to lose her own child in gunfire. Yeah, that makes perfect sense for a narrative and a motive. And of course, if you read between the lines like I did in the podcast, which again is linked below, you'll see all the same narratives with that. Oh, this person was walking around loosely with guns. They have mental health problems. They shouldn't be able to carry. This is what's important to them. And again, I've talked about this over the years. I'm not this huge gun advocate. I'm not one of these guys that does these videos and it's like, films myself shooting guns in my backyard. Okay, I'm armed to protect myself from a rogue government, because that's what it is. Do I think I stand a chance by myself? No, I do not. But again, the problem here is that these people are going to overreach more than they already do when they take your guns away or try to take our guns away. Think about how bad it is now, and just imagine an unarmed country. And look at China and those people over there. Now, there's a lot of brain dead, zombies over in China, but they're the equivalent to what you would call woke in America. They don't have a clue what's going on. You could say anything and show anything in the news, they will believe it. You could see all the same patterns of what the shooter is. This is the new motto. It's no longer Osama bin Laden, the CIA operative, who is the blueprint that people think of when they hear the word terrorist. It is conspiracy theorists, watches or listens or makes conspiracy theorist videos online, supposedly linked to either MAGA or Q, right? Anti-government rhetoric, all this type of stuff, right? That's the new blueprint. So every one of these false flags they create, every time a casual person sees or listens to someone like us, that's what they're building in their mind. That's part of the psychosis. They hear us, they see us, we tell them any of this stuff that's outside of their box, which is a vacuum of fake information, and they immediately draw a red flag and think that we're dangerous. That's what they're doing to people. They're turning them on us. This is how psychological operations work. And again, in the podcast, upcoming podcast, I'm going to go into detail about some other things that people really need to know about. The Nuremberg Code, how they create these people, to go and do these shootings, because they're all created to it. If they're not a willing participant in it, they're a Manchurian candidate or somebody who's gone through heavy duty mind control. People don't realize this is allowed or going on, I should say, because they're under it. That's the problem. They're under hypnosis. So they don't believe it. That's what we're dealing with. So I feel for people, but you also see the reaction of people online about this event, and it's like one thing after the other, right? One of the things I saw, which I don't think I could put on screen because of the words in there, but a witness at the parade who is legally blind. Okay, a witness at the parade, legally blind. So how is it a witness? Describe the moment a stranger pulled her to safety after gunshots were heard. Legally blind witness. Legally blind, literally, like it's in our faces, right? Legally blind, because guess what? They're telling you that a legally blind person has information about it. That's how ridiculous the crisis actors, et cetera, are getting at these events. That legally blind people are talking about gun control and describing the moment for you. Well, she's describing what? What she heard? What'd you hear? Loud people screaming? This is what the news goes to, right? And they rub it in your faces by saying legally blind, because guess what? The audience listening is also legally blind and deaf and dumb. And all we can do is try to continue to wake these people up. If you didn't subscribe yet to my podcast, now is the time to do it. I also want to let you know my backup channel, A Time for a Reckoning, is linked below as well. This video is likely to get a strike for just talking about it. I try not to put screenshots in there to try to evade, but this is what ends up happening. Sub to the other channel, but make sure you go over and create an account for the podcast, okay? Because if I'm wiped out, you're not going to even know that I'm uploading new podcasts. So just create an account. It's 100% free. Let's all get used to this moving towards podcasting, et cetera. It's going to be like 70s, 80s, 90s radio is what I'm like starting to gear towards here. Like realizing that, you might be able to just get it out on the airwaves if you're just talking, because they're not going to be paying attention. The videos showing people how fake this stuff is what they're really hell-bent on stopping right now. Because when people see the videos, they're like, wow, that is really fake. Yeah, it is. So definitely sub to the podcast, sub to the backup channel. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Oh, man. Like I said, legally blind witness. Well, just talking to the legally deaf, blind, and brainless masses. I thank you for being here, everybody. God bless all of you as always and your families.